you understood already. Entrar
Ele entrou, já está aqui dentro.
Ok, gente.
Só que quando ele for falar...
Vai.
Só que ele tem que montar um dos canais.
Isso, eu explico agora para ele. Eu vou explicar para ele como é que é a dinâmica.
Rapidinho, 2h26.
Okay. Só um minutinho. Só um minutinho. Quem for fazer a abertura, me dá um tempinho que eu preciso startar a gravação, tá? Para até aparecer a tarjeta vermelha, né? Porque pode começar um boa tarde deslocado, né? Tá bom? Então, só espera aparecer a tarjinha vermelha de gravando.
Mas antes disso, se eu puder ter acesso ao professor Spiegel, só para dar um warning para ele. Good afternoon, Professor Klaus Spiegel. Welcome. Okay. The host can do it here. Guilherme, você pode mutar ele, por favor? Na sala de conferência? Na sala de tradução? Não, ele tem que fazer isso. Pois
Oi,
ele quer ouvir só a tradução.
Quem tá aqui é o Ruiter, ele tá off. O microfone dele tá desligado.
We got you. We are fixing this. No problem.
Ô, Álvaro. Álvaro?
By the way, Professor Klaus, do I pronounce your name right? Is Klaus Spiedel or Klaus Spiedel? Spiedel? Okay, Spiedel. Sorry for the mistake on the first time. Actually, you are in already. You're in. I can see you. Session. Good afternoon, everyone. Those who follow the second colloquium, International Colloquium on Photography and Image in the University of Brasilia. My name is Rafael. We are organizers together with Professors Susana Dobal and Rose May. Today we have the pleasure of presenting this first table, this round table of the event, is Art, Research, and Dispositives on Image Creation of the Landscape. We'll have 4 speakers in this afternoon, and from now on, I introduce them. We have Professor Klaus Speidel from the University of Vienna. He's a theoretical of image and art, a philosopher and critical of art. And we have Professor Karina Diaz, who is a visual artist and professor of the Department of Visual Arts at the University of Brasilia. Professor Antonio Fattorelli. Professor Fattorelli is a professor at the undergrad and postgrad courses at the School of Communication of Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, and Mariana Capelletti, who is also a professor and works at the Catholic University of the state of Goiás. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. And I now pass the floor to the first speaker, Professor Speidel. Professor Speidel. Muito obrigado por vir a Brasília, de certa forma. Ok, muito obrigado. Obrigado, Rafael. Obrigado por me convidar a participar nesta conferência. Eu estou muito feliz por tomar parte nisso. E, sim, eu tenho uma tela para compartilhar com vocês. Eu tenho algumas imagens e também alguns textos que eu gostaria de partilhar. Se vocês quiserem, podemos começar a minha apresentação sem nenhuma delonga. Yes. Ok, eu vou tentar. Bom, tá bom para todo mundo agora?
Não, ele pode estar com o YouTube aberto. Fala para ele desligar o YouTube.
Eu
De
ainda me
repente,
ouço
ele está
aqui.
em 2 tabs.
Ok. Agora eu me ouço. Bem no fundinho, me ouço, mas não me incomoda agora. Podemos continuar. Ele perguntou se o YouTube está funcionando. Yes, Professor Speidel, you can go on. Ok, perfeito. Bom, então eu vou falar sobre a narrativa de paisagens e focar na transição da figura para o traço. E no final, como eu sou um narrador, um narratologista falando nesta conferência, eu percebo que deve ser mais útil se eu trouxer alguns conceitos do meu histórico teórico que seria útil para entender a narrativa na paisagem. Então, eu decidi não fazer essa caminhada completa, mas partilhar algumas observações com vocês. Então, o método é inspirado pelo Ludwig Wittgenstein, que disse uma vez que o trabalho de um filósofo consiste em juntar recolecções para um objetivo específico. E o que eu vou tentar fazer é tentar juntar essas recoleções de backgrounds diferentes. E para prover essas ferramentas e exemplos e observações para refletir na narrativa do contexto da paisagem. E eu vou falar paisagem nessa palestra, mas o que eu quero dizer com paisagem, com imagens de paisagem, ao invés de paisagens como nós podemos perceber no mundo, as recoleções, elas vêm
So you have to
Ruiter, quem precisar de tradução vai entrar aqui, viu?
Ok.
Bom, vocês podem ver minha tela. Ok, bom. Eu sou bem feliz por apresentar a minha pesquisa aqui. E eu escolhi apresentar algumas observações das narrativas na paisagem, ao invés de fazer uma palestra que vai de A a Z, porque eu acho que talvez as observações de um estudioso da narração podem ser interessantes para uma audiência que é mais familiar com a fotografia e a teoria da paisagem. O meu método é o método liechtensteiniano. E, num certo sentido, Ludwig Wittgenstein diz que o trabalho de um filósofo consiste em juntar coleções para um objetivo específico. A tela dele congelou. Ok, bom, vou começar de novo com o histórico da paisagem. Como vocês podem ver, eu mudei de sala aqui, eu estou em outro lugar de casa. E eu vou partilhar a minha apresentação com vocês de novo. Ok, eu espero que vocês possam ver a minha tela. Então, eu estava mencionando que eu ia partilhar algumas observações que vêm de três fontes diferentes: da pesquisa, da crítica artística e da curadoria. É claro que a parte principal, a parte mais relevante a esse assunto, vem da minha pesquisa acadêmica em narrativas. Primeiro, com a tese sobre narrativas regionais, e depois, através de um projeto de pós-doutorado na Universidade de Narf, onde eu tentei confirmar experimentalmente se as minhas intuições forem, como um estudioso da narratologia, forem confrontadas. A primeira observação que parece ser importante para mim neste contexto é que as fotografias, elas passam ontologias, onde a ontologia é a ciência filosófica do que existe. E, para mim, isso me conecta com uma citação de Friedrich Nietzsche, onde ele diz que, mesmo se a relação de um estímulo nervoso à imagem que ela produz talvez não seja necessária, e se por acaso esta mesma imagem for produzida milhões de vezes e passar por várias gerações, e por último ela aparecer para toda a humanidade e como efeito da mesma causa, aí por último ela adquire o mesmo sentido para o homem, como se ela fosse uma imagem necessária. Só como se fosse um sonho repetido sem fim, que seria sentida e julgada como sendo verdadeira. Então, eu acredito que as imagens, não somente as imagens na nossa mente e as da percepção, mas também as imagens que nós criamos em fotografias ou em pinturas, realmente influenciam a forma como nós pensamos sobre o que existe. E um exemplo, que eu agora estou trabalhando com imagens de paisagens, é essa pintura de Peter Bruegel, que provavelmente muitos de vocês conhecem, que, se vocês olharem para ela pela primeira vez, vocês podem perceber que são algumas pessoas trabalhando no campo, alguém está pastoreando ovelhas, alguém tentando pescar. Mas se vocês olharem o suficiente, vocês vão descobrir este elemento aqui. Duas pernas que saem da cena, e é uma imagem de um homem se afogando. E, de repente, essa imagem é totalmente transformada. E, por sinal, isso mostra que a arte do espaço não é espacial. Ela é também temporal, porque nós trazemos toda a nossa temporalidade para a imagem. Mesmo que alguma coisa seja feita de uma vez, nós não podemos ver tudo de uma vez. E assim, um pintor como Bruegel pode programar a percepção. Mas quando nós agora pensamos nessa imagem como uma ontologia ou contendo uma ontologia, o que nós podemos pensar é que essa é a natureza e que outras pessoas estão totalmente indiferentes ao sofrimento individual. E é claro, essa visão da natureza que é transportada por esta imagem vai também influenciar a maneira como nós tratamos a natureza. Se a natureza não se importar conosco, por que deveríamos nós nos importarmos com ela? Então, eu acredito que as imagens influenciam fortemente a forma como nós olhamos o mundo. E no mundo, né? E esta imagem é um outro exemplo que eu acredito que passa uma imagem um pouquinho diferente. É claro que é uma história dos cristãos que nós todos vamos reconhecer, né? Porque é a história da criação de Adão e Eva. E é a história completa. Nós vemos o Adão sendo criado aqui, nós vemos como a Eva é criada, como o Deus proíbe, e está bem ao centro da imagem, e proíbe você comer a fruta proibida. E talvez este seja o presente, é claro. É uma imagem policrômica, uma imagem que tem vários momentos explicitamente, o que é raro na fotografia hoje, porque a fotografia tem conquistado o momento. A fotografia, na verdade, é a conquista do momento. E esse é o tipo de história que é passado por esta imagem. Mas você também pode ter uma ontologia. E essa ontologia é um pouquinho diferente na sua natureza, porque ela é um estágio. Ela, na verdade, é um palco onde os humanos agem e a natureza está indiferente à naturação e eles são indiferentes à natureza. Agora, pensem sobre uma cultura que cresça com esse tipo de imagem. Versus essa outra imagem mais antiga da Gênesis de Wiener. Onde parece haver uma relação um pouco diferente aqui. Vocês veem que a natureza aqui tem a árvore, tem a mesma forma que o Adão, como se ela estivesse sofrendo junto com ele, reagindo. Aqui a árvore protege a Eva. E então aqui vocês veem como a natureza e os humanos interagem. Eu poderia falar muito mais sobre essa imagem, é claro. Isso tem a ver com a imagem de Eibert Alphay. Mas se vocês olharem imagens como essa, e se vocês cultivarem imagens como essas, provavelmente o seu relacionamento com a natureza vai ser muito mais simples, porque ele parece refletir que essa é a minha percepção de uma relação simbiótica com a natureza, onde humanos e natureza não estão em locais diferentes, onde a natureza não é só um palco para as empreitadas humanas. E talvez essa forma de passar as ontologias seja mais eficiente, porque ela não é uma história que a imagem está contando, é a forma que a imagem está contando a história, que também passa esse tipo de mensagem sutil e essa compreensão do que o mundo é e como as coisas se relacionam umas com as outras. É claro que no Cranach nós temos outra história. Eu já falei um pouquinho sobre isso aqui. Nós temos uma temporalidade que se desenvolve em linearidade. Então, primeiro essa é uma coisa, e depois outra coisa, depois outra coisa. E existe ainda uma outra forma de conceber a natureza, e eu descobri isso aqui por coincidência, através de um amigo, um ontologista, que queria estudar o Andoqué, a cultura na Colômbia. E ela foi pedida a desenhar uma imagem de um rio durante o verão, e ela saiu. E quando voltou, eles tinham desenhado esse tipo de imagem aqui. Isso não é uma imagem do rio no verão, mas é uma imagem do rio durante o ano inteiro. E quando ela pediu a eles, por que você não desenhou só o verão, que foi o que eu pedi, e eles disseram, é assim que o tradutor espanhol desenhou para eles. Essa é a forma que é. E eles não queriam pintar uma imagem que não representasse o rio para eles. Então, eles pintaram uma imagem cíclica, não uma imagem do tempo linear, mas uma imagem do tempo girando e se repetindo ao mesmo tempo. E aí eu diria que esse tipo de visão da natureza e esse tipo de imagem passa ainda uma outra abordagem sobre como nós tratamos ela. Então, esse é o primeiro ponto, a primeira observação que eu queria fazer, que mostra que todos aqueles que são solicitados a produzir uma imagem devem ser bem cuidadosos, se eu estiver correto. Porque as imagens que eles criam podem influenciar significativamente a forma como outras pessoas veem o mundo. Então, essa foi a primeira observação. A segunda é um pouco mais diretamente ligada à narrativa, que aqui eu gostaria de fazer uma diferenciação entre a narratividade e a narrativa, e arguir que elas não são a mesma coisa. Hoje, as pessoas falam frequentemente e facilmente de histórias contadas, tudo conta uma história, mas eu não acho que isso é verdade. E eu acho que, se nós usarmos o conceito da narrativa de uma forma inflacionária, nós perdemos a substância. Então, muitas das coisas que as pessoas hoje chamam histórias ou narrativas são, na verdade, coisas que têm narratividade, que têm um certo grau de narratividade, mas não contam uma história. Eu acredito que as imagens que eu mostrei até agora, especialmente aquelas de Adão e Eva, realmente contam uma história, com um problema, uma solução, que o Aristóteles já disse que era constitutiva de uma narrativa ideal, de uma história ideal. Mas eu gostaria de apresentar esta diferença e, esperadamente, talvez vocês encontrem útil, e aí podemos continuar falando sobre isso, sobre a narratividade e a narrativa, que eu acho que está presente assim que uma representação evoca um evento. E uma representação pode ser um texto, ou pode ser uma imagem, uma fotografia, uma pintura, ou uma instalação. Assim que eles evocam um evento, eu acho que ela tem narratividade. Mas a narrativa, na verdade, tem que passar histórias completas, com estágios diferentes, palcos diferentes, eventos diferentes, e talvez até mesmo com um problema e uma solução, como Aristóteles disse. Eu não vou entrar muito mais em profundidade nessa definição de narratividade, mas eu vou tentar ilustrar como que a narratividade pode ser útil como um conceito para analisar uma paisagem ou imagens de uma paisagem. A narratividade não é a mesma coisa que uma narrativa, porque as representações podem narrar alguma coisa e ter a narratividade sem contar uma história. Essa é uma implicação da segunda observação. Isso, por exemplo, é uma pintura de Otto Dix, é um vale próximo a Pontresina, com o Permina Group, de 1938. Eu acredito que essa imagem, a maior parte de vocês vai concordar, não conta uma história. E eu também acho que muitos de vocês concordariam que ela não tem muita narratividade, especialmente se nós compararmos a essa aqui, onde vocês veem uma floresta que foi destruída por uma guerra. Essa é uma pintura que ele fez 20 anos mais cedo, logo depois da Primeira Guerra. Você ainda vê soldados deitados ali. Então, existem muitas outras coisas que fazem um grau de diferença entre a narratividade. Nenhuma delas conta uma história. Isso, na verdade, não conta uma história e você não sabe qual é a história aqui. Não é uma história precisa, pelo menos, mas ela tem um alto grau de narratividade, porque você pode ver os eventos que destruíram essas árvores e eventos que mataram esses homens aqui, esses soldados. E esta imagem aqui, arguivelmente, tem ainda um grau mais baixo de narratividade. São crateras criadas por bombas, iluminadas por flamas de um ciclo da guerra, na Primeira Guerra Mundial. Isso significa que nós podemos ter imagens diferentes, relativamente diferentes, que podem ser classificadas de acordo com os seus graus de narratividade, dependendo se elas evocam talvez um evento ou muitos eventos, se eles evocam problemas, talvez até mesmo soluções. É claro que nós temos aí um grande espectro de problemas, né? A terceira observação que eu faria neste contexto é que os eventos são mais explícitos e isso não implica que uma representação tenha um grau maior de narratividade. Isso é muito importante porque eu acho que tradicionalmente as narrativas, as contagens de histórias têm uma conexão com uma representação explícita de eventos, duas pessoas que brigam, talvez, voltando a Dix, uma explosão que você tenha visto. E eu acho que isso não é verdade. Você vê aqui, por exemplo, na esquerda, uma imagem de Gerd Arndt, do isótipo, uma tentativa o cientista da comunicação provavelmente sabe, criar imagens que podem ser entendidas por qualquer um. E essa aqui é a imagem de um acidente, vocês podem ver na esquerda. E você vê um carro batendo no poste. E aí, na direita você não vê nenhum carro batendo em nada. Mas ainda assim você vê que os carros bateram nesses postes. E, arguivelmente, eu diria que a imagem da direita tem um grau mais alto de narratividade, apesar de que o evento não seja visível. Ele é apenas um traço do evento, mas nas nossas mentes nós percebemos o evento que acontece. E pelo fato da contagem de história não acontecer numa página, ou em livros, ou em fotos, ela sempre acontece nas nossas mentes. Isso também implica que se uma imagem tiver uma representatividade ou não, depende também do recipiendário. E eu disse para vocês que essa imagem não tem muita narratividade, enquanto é verdade, e provavelmente muitos de vocês concordam, não é verdade para um geólogo, ou talvez algum biólogo, que seria capaz de ler a história desse vale na imagem. Então, as imagens que não contam história para certas pessoas podem contar muito para outras pessoas. Isso se conecta, claro, com o título da minha palestra sobre traços, porque ela pode muito bem ser, se o traço pode ser a primeira coisa a contar a história. E esse aqui é um exemplo da minha própria vida como pesquisador, porque eu sempre uso essa imagem para mostrar que essa aqui é uma imagem que não tem narrativa. E eu uma vez tive um especialista em cavalos na audiência. E a pessoa me disse, bom, conhecendo cavalos, eu vejo que esse cavalo agora está em pé, mas dado o tamanho das suas narinas, ele acabou de correr. Então, para um especialista em cavalos, essa imagem disse isso. E tem um certo grau de narratividade, mas não teve para mim porque implica o evento de um cavalo que estava correndo. Observação ou implicação da quarta observação é que, pelo fato da contagem desculpe interromper, Klaus, nós temos que avisar que o seu tempo está quase acabando, se você puder acelerar um pouquinho, nós vamos agradecer. Ok. Bom, é porque eu não pude manter mais o controle do tempo com todas as interrupções. Ok. Bom, como a contagem de histórias acontece nas mentes, e regularmente, sistematicamente, ela desencadeia um processo que é chamado de narrativa. Por exemplo, muitas pessoas pensam que esse exemplo aqui, que foi atribuído a Ernest Hemingway, Baby Shoes Never Worn for Sale, sapatos de bebês nunca vestidos, nunca calçados à venda, pode ser classificado. Isso aqui foi um anúncio de um jornal e que não explicitamente representa um evento. E essa outra imagem aqui, eu acredito que também passa vários eventos. Alguém colocando um pôster na parede, quando a Alemanha de Hitler tinha tomado o poder, e a França tinha tomado a França e a Bélgica, e alguém veio durante a noite e apagou esse símbolo da suástica, pintando as cores da França, da bandeira da França em cima. Então aqui tem toda uma história contada na forma de símbolos, né? Agora, como que nós entendemos? Se eu puder ter só 2 minutos, eu vou resumir. Como que nós podemos entender o que é sistemático e regular, uma evocação sistemática e regular de uma história na mente de uma pessoa? Eu acho que a abordagem mais plausível não é a introspecção, mas é, de fato, trabalhar com os espectadores ordinários. Isso foi o que eu fiz na minha pesquisa cognitiva em Viena. Esse é o website do meu projeto de pesquisa, para enriquecer a nossa percepção como especialistas e entender que pessoas ordinárias, na verdade, entendem as histórias, mas para assegurar que nós não somos apenas espectadores excepcionais, que veem coisas e veem histórias em fotos que ninguém mais consegue ver. Então, eu fiz uma pesquisa, eu vou mostrar rapidamente um exemplo aqui, que mostrou uma outra abordagem. São 45 pessoas, e eu pedi a eles, perguntei a eles uma coisa bem simples. Eu pedi a eles para resumir o conteúdo da foto. E eu consegui resumos bem complexos para um curto. Provavelmente uma zona de guerra, uma garota sangrando e chorando, e um fotógrafo, um repórter por outro lado, fizeram a foto é toda ela preto e branco, só a garota tinha um ursinho, e essa foi a única informação. O que eu achei interessante é que é claro que isso aqui faz parte dessa imagem, alguma coisa aconteceu, destruiu essa paisagem. Essa imagem narra a destruição dessas casas. Essa aqui é uma projeção de quem vê, ela é de fato ambígua, se era uma guerra, ou se foi um terremoto, ou algum desastre natural, nada na imagem nos diz isso. Então, pessoas diferentes aplicaram ideias diferentes aqui. Mas, em muitos casos, isso aqui é como os traços podem contar histórias, e você pode perguntar às pessoas se eles veem alguns momentos em especial. E o que eu descobri é que a maior parte das pessoas que vêm dizem que vem os momentos de destruição. Não sou só eu, mas a minha introspecção me diz que a maior parte das pessoas parecem ver isso como o primeiro momento e esse como o último, onde essa equipe de auxiliares vão poder dizer para a garota: bom, essas são algumas observações sobre a contação de histórias que eu gostaria de partilhar com vocês. Desculpem que foi muito complicado tecnicamente, eu espero que vocês ainda tenham tirado alguma coisa da apresentação. E eu agora busco as perguntas um pouco mais tarde e as discussões que nós possamos ter. Muito obrigado pela atenção de vocês. Espero que vocês tenham sido capazes de focar nessa parte. Obrigado, Klaus. Muito obrigado. E desculpe pelos problemas técnicos que nós tivemos. Mais tarde nós teremos uma discussão sobre todas essas apresentações e aí vamos chamá-lo de novo. It is a pleasure to be with all of you here. This is the first colloquium of 2013. We also had the presence of Osmar Gonçalves, who's here with us. And with very good memories of this first meeting. So I'd like to congratulate you for the courage, your determination, for making this event online with a series of difficulties and technical problems, but we have here with us a spirit of resilience, a strong thing. And we'll turn this page on and we'll conquer new moments to celebrate and overcome this denial. These meetings are very important to keep our dreams alive and to keep the will and the determination that we'll be back in person. I'd like to say also that it's a pleasure to be joining this table with so many researchers, yeah, unfortunately, his connection went down. So we have to actually pray it doesn't happen again. So okay, so the ideal of instantaneity of the conquest of the moment shared by the pure and direct picture, it seems to intend to nullify the time. Sometimes this is shared by the common sense associated to 0 degree, its total abolition when in a certain instance, according to Cartier-Bresson. Also, our virtual mode of referring to the instant picture as commonly designating a cut in time or a frozen time or a suspension of time are symptomatic modes of this operation of denial, of annulation, nullification of time in image and its effective nullification, in total disregard to the creative process and those circuits in between the real and the imagination implied in the creation of image. The overcome of the instantaneous notion known as the nullification of time, which also it's documental, oriented as to report objectively people and places, present many and new challenges. However, thinking in a different way, the composed procedures such as a symbol of several layers of original images, in the same way as the effects of uh, tremor make the time of the passage of time and the application in all pictures, also in instantaneous pictures, because it also has a sense of delays, elapse of the time, opening the image to an infinite number of processes related to the temporal regimes of photography. The elasticity and plasticity of the representation of time, understood as a modulable discipline or a plastic discipline to be worked out, to be processed by the photographers. And we need to observe that the image does not report the biography of the author, nevertheless, the objective representation of the world, but it constitutes the interior of a relation of reciprocity in between the photographer and the objective world, mediated by the specificities of its technical options. Technical options assumed by the photographer during the creation of the image, which means that every image necessarily is processed by the memory, by the imagination, and by subjectivity. From the presentation of 3 essays, marine landscapes, invisible images, we intend to pinpoint to the multiple and dynamic places addressed to the photographer, the technological mediation and sense or feeling universe used by the photographic images as a way to configure the landscape and to assess the imagination. So I'd like to present to you very briefly the first of these essays. It is called Invisible Landscape. So, Invisible Landscapes. The images of this series were taken from the amplification through the computer of small details of the original picture. The pictures were taken without looking the visor, moving the camera randomly around the scenario in places of the city of Rio de Janeiro, marked by my own affective experience. Using amplification, I select parts of the image impossible to be visualized previously, fragments of that see memories or a recurrent scenario in my imagination. In the text over technical reproducibility, we can see difference in between photomechanical and perceived images. And these are his words. In general, a movement of a man who walks, even if in long strides, but we don't see anything in his attitude in that specific moment when he takes a stroke or a stride. Through the resources of the camera, only the picture can actually reveal this optical quotient, and only psychoanalysis can actually reveal the functional quotient. I'm very much interested in this idea of optical quotient. Oh, now we can see the image. All right. Now, this instigating role attributed to the optical unconsciousness by Benjamin should be noticed in 2 ways. On one side, in consideration to the conquest of that fraction of a second, in a way that it confers visibility, interconnected appearances, overcoming the deficiencies due to the lack of perception of time, but at the same time as recognizing the work done by imagination in the building of these images. I'd like to propose now that the photomechanical image gives us in this double perception, besides the pose, the fixation of a face, giving certain nuances and enigmas of the view of an effective view. This is a very daring proposal, but the images of this series might activate a possible optical subconsciousness in certain details that were not accessible by the original picture in its original format. I'd like to observe also that the pictures of this essay are at the limit of existence, in which amplified a little bit more. They were amplified 2 or 300, 400 times. But if they were a little bit more amplified, they would lose totally its figuration sense. They would become just stains in a paper. Even the pixels that form the image would be confused. Just I'll present another essay called 1000. In these pictures, I placed a telescope lens to a small camera, a 35 millimeter camera, always in places marked by my own experience in affective memory. Sorry, there is a helicopter flying right by my house. Please give me just a few seconds. I was tripping. I thought it was the sound of the image. But in places marked by my own experience, my memory, my affective memory in the city of Rio de Janeiro, using negative pellicles. The PowerPoint actually is not responding now. But using color pictures, I decided to amplify these negative pellicles without the usual inversion. So the result is a very dense image with many obfuscated parts, and added by the flattening surfaces using this super teleobjective lens, and giving us this strange feeling of proximity. Yeah, I'm not able to flip the PowerPoint images anymore. I do have a suggestion. You stop your presentation and go back all the way. Meanwhile, Fatorelli, there is a question on the chat. Someone is asking, in which beach of Rio de Janeiro do you live? Oh, I actually don't live in a beach. I live in the Botanic Garden, which is further into the mountains. Actually, the question is, what is the beach of the image? Well, this is in the Urca beach, Urca, in Rio de Janeiro. Okay, I guess we can get it. The second image of this series. This is the third image at downtown in Rio, in a very dense, intense area of town. And this is another image from the Urca Beach, actually Botafogo Beach. That is the Botafogo Beach. I'd like to present one last essay very briefly to you, which is entitled Marine Landscape from the Marine Imagination. Well, the pictures were taken with the medium format 26:7, a very heavy equipment positioned in a tripod, so with very little mobility. At Pontal do Atalaia in the city of Arraial do Cabo, where I am right now. It is a small city in the municipality of Rio de Janeiro that I go frequently from my early days. It was taken in the evening with very low speed. This picture registered an environment, the wind blowing very strong in the horizon, and you see the sea with the corvettes, the low light. At this magic moment of the sunset, this would be a contemplation attitude, because we open a halt, a sensorial halt, and it proposes a certain distance in the look. But anyways, it is a very distinctive relationship that marks the two previous essays carried out in urban centers, more nervous, and these are more specific images. But this is what I wanted to bring to you, these three different essays, just to provoke a conversation over this relationship of in between reciprocity, in between real and image, crossed out by different processes and procedures of photography when we give time to photography. This is what I had to show you. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Professor, for your contributions. I now pass the floor to Professor Carini. I was actually able to finish my presentation in time, right? Yeah, thank you for this as well. Professor Carini, let me just get out of the screen. Okay, here I am. Well, thank you very much, Rafael. Well, good afternoon once again. I will actually thank you all again in this moment that we're reorganizing and reconnecting our computers and reactivating our connections. Nothing more logical than rethinking. I'd like to thank very much for the invitation from Susanna and Rafael and Rose to be here with you today, talking about landscape. It is a field that I follow for many years, and for which I have a lot of love, especially now in these dark times. Landscaping is a possibility of seeing the beauty of the world, and how important is the beauty of the world today, just to get brave again. But I'd like to thank you again and say of this urgency of thinking the landscape as has become an urgent action, not only to survival, but to find the route that will take us to the exterior space as well. So I will share my landscape, my presentation with you, and I hope it works out. Can you see my screen? Because I don't see anybody else. Yes, it is okay. We can see you. All right. Well, my presentation, my speech today is called Video Landscape, the Measure and the Endless, with two sentences that follow me in my thoughts and in my writings. First of them is the landscape. So the landscape is the measure of the look that silences the noise, where the sky and earth touch upon one another. It is to be here and to feel like you are there, and commotion. And the video, I ask what is a filming equipment over which all lines converge to the same point and becomes thereafter the projection of the eye over the surface of projection. Karina, if you want to just give an F5, well, it is already for me. No, we can only see your initial slide. I'll give an F5. Not yet. I think we'll have to do it not in presentation mode, but in miniature. Okay, let's go. With all these lines in there. Well, the... oh, can someone help explaining how to exhibit in exhibiting? She is probably using two screens. No, I'm not. To me, too many voices at the same time. All right, now we got it. Remove the guides. Okay, you remove the guides. All right, let's do it, because today it is a difficult day. And coincidentally, I bring the same image as Klaus presented with Peter Bruegel, the landscape of the Icarus fall from, this is a copy from 1600s, but the original is from 1558. And this painting follows me for a long time. Today, more than ever, during these times, I have looked at it quite every day. Bruegel, who has Christine Bicklungsman, she says that Bruegel builds a geography of the look. So to me, this painting became, I look at it every day. And why do I do it? Because being at home every day until we feel alone and exiled from the world, we're at home every day, abandoned by our land. But how can we nominate this? What remains as an issue here? Well, in this painting, as Klaus said, the world keeps worked out and elaborated, and Bruegel goes down vertiginously without no one paying attention or altering the flow of his own life to look at the one who actually fell down. So I ask myself, what remains as an issue here? As if all landscapes were all of a sudden gone back, and we need to find the lost alliances. In pandemic times, confined, we're supposed to reinvent our ways of life and how not to think about landscaping. This landscape reivindicates itself as a composition, as a connection among many things in the world, because it is just fragments. In these times of confinement, we wish to see more than we see. We to breathe the air that lays in around us. And in the verge of a cliff, there is a poetry, as Bachelard says. As Icarus, we wish to escape from the trap to the outside, en route to Earth. And this return is not docile. It is multifaceted, diverse, and dispersed. Destroyed parts spread out throughout the same confusion. So we are undoubtedly invited to dream about the constellation that we created. However, what challenges us is not the reconstitution of one unit, but the will to follow the flow and to think about our terrestrial condition. In flight, we are just like Icarus. We fall down vertiginously, wishing to put our feet on land. Icarus from Bruegel goes down without causing any tremor. Life goes on, and if we don't pay any attention, we couldn't even notice it's his presence among the life that goes on. Christian de Buxman, Bruegel's Icarus, is a traveler from the impossible. In this daring, this audacious flight, in this geography of look, we are a terrestrial point. The downfall of Icarus is not for everyone. Nietzsche already taught us. It is, before everything else, a poetry of the flight. We need to have wings when we love cliffs. Wings to fly and to overcome the problems. So it would be enough to create in flight before we fall down. We should create other geographies, a choreographical plan of everything. In this seismography of present times, as Edil Berman writes, how not to fear the world that is coming. In this movement, we reinvent measures, redimension distances, we are in displacement. The unrooting also leads us to an image that is being built. So we have an enigma here. How to open the invisible to find other possibilities. Possibilities for the urban and non-urban landscape of people with whom we live together, proposing maybe other destinations, inaugurating new routes. In this aerial view, we think about Hippocradell when he says, it is necessary to plan or to fly, it is necessary to be separated together because this is urgent and unuseful urgency. And so let's remember of our bodies in the possibility of downfall that could help us to dimension our weight, our inertia, and the gravity that involves Earth. In downfall, the functionality of the world loses sense. We are in displacement and we are displaced. It is necessary to rest. It is necessary to land, to be on Earth and to inhabit the terrain. There is no way to avoid Polkadel, stars of greatness. Where to restart, from where to refine the landscape. It brings me close to my window. And then I would ask, I don't know if we could just exhibit this video. Is it okay? Before that, let's ask everyone to cross our fingers. Okay, all right. You can see already, right? All right. I will play it. Yeah, it is a mute video, okay? Well, thank you to our technician. So this is window number 1 of 2009. It was filmed during 1 year with the camera in the same point of view, without moving it, filming this whole landscape with the wish of filming Brasilia as if it was anywhere else. That monumentality of the city would be the change of the seasons, the change in lighting, and not the monumentality of its buildings, but the monumentality of its horizon. Speaking of a window, there is no way to think about window without going back to embrace the history of art. I will very briefly mention here. The window is a pictorial invention. For many authors, it is a visual bomb because it instituted the heart of the world in the heart of the religious scene. So I begin presenting to you 2 paintings that to me are very important. They are dated of 1319. One is called A City Over the Sea, and the other one is a castle on the lakeshore. They are at the Siena Museum, and at the time I was studying these paintings, they were exhibited side by side. And what is interesting to me in this painting is that all of a sudden, during the 14th century, the curtain reveals and the world came up. Especially in this castle on the lake shore, what is interesting to me is this presence of this person, or this people, this guy sitting on the low right corner. He's part of the space. He's not working. He's not praying. He's just sitting, looking to what we don't see. And these 2 small paintings, they actually appear, and all of a sudden they disappear. The curtain closes back, and it will reopen in the 15th centuries at the Flanders, such as Robert Campin, Van Eyck. And I'm not going to get into details, but what is interesting is this optical structure that is the window. When you come close to this painting, it appears in the upper left corner. It's a small opening through which the world comes in. And you see, what view is this? Then we'll find the city. We'll find a happy city with its chevaliers, with the civil construction, with the sinuous road, showing that beyond the horizon there is another way that leads to a broader world. And this window, for those who understand that landscape is a pictorial invention, it is a part of the territory. It actually gives the look of the painter into the world. It's making the territory a landscape. And Ian van Eyck, we see the landscape with the dimension of the religious scene. It is not just a hole on the religious scene. It is a world through the religious scene. And religion and the people are always taking part in the scene. This scene here, we see 2 guys right here in the center, which don't even look to the religious scene. They are actually with their backs faced, looking to the world. Of course, this is a celestial Jerusalem, but the characters are looking to the world. They are looking. They are curious people in there. Actually, they say that they have the wish to see more than they are allowed to see, to have a panoramic view. And this is just for curiosity. This character with the red cap, for many people, is Van Eyck himself, because he has a famous painting that is the man with the red turban, and he represents himself here. This is a way to say, I am here. From here, I can see. This window will broaden and will occupy the whole painting. Here I brought one of the best paintings of landscape. It's from Caspar David Friedrich, The Traveler Over the Cloud Sea. And he will take in our position. I see what you see. I am you seeing the landscape, but it's more than that. In this case, with the urban vests, with the stick, what makes him wear these clothes on top of these rocks? It is associated to Goethe, that says that from the highest places, it's over the highest place that you find peace. And he says that looks at this painting and says, where is the stability there? For sure, he's at the center of the scene, but where? What guarantees us the stability of this character? Ouch. It's like a dictator who actually rules the world. I am going a little fast because of the time. And this window here is a cosmic window. Here we look at the 60s generation from land art. I think Susanna is going to talk about land art in her speech. And this is a window that is cosmic as well, as to direct our eyes towards the sky. So many arts I brought to REL. I didn't give any specifications here because these are many cosmic windows that build cameras for us to look at the sea, at the sky. The sky becomes a presence and becomes time. So it's very important to think about this when we think about landscaping, because I think landscaping has a time as it is a moment in time. It needs time for the connections to be made and for us to find this space, this room. We need to have time for the space to appear to us. Landscape is not given to anyone, anytime, but it is always in the possibility of becoming visible. I brought now another example. This is from Nancy Holt. It's an American artist from the 70s, from land art, where she makes holes in this concrete pipes, and this project constellation. So this micro constellation that appears, these holes are windows, but the pipes are like they make the sky come down the earth. Now to end, I'd like to finish with this work here. This is part of a video, just a frame of a video. This work is called Rock 1 from 2017. And why do I want to use this? Because I think landscape is certain. It's tributary on one side, which includes seeing and not seeing, but it is sure. It is the concrete of the world, but it is also the extremely subjective relationship of all of us, solitary observers in the world. And it is the point of view and the point of contact. Landscape is seen, it is felt, but it is also crossed out. We can go through the landscape in the same way that we go towards the world touches us. So I think landscape puts us in the heart of the present. It actually puts us in the strength of the present. It is paramount to remind that those who feel alone in the landscape should look at this. Who can feel alone when you have this whole space around? Of course, we are solitary or lone observers. But this is myself sitting in this rock here in one of the places that I love the most. It is the far south in Latin America. There are places where you would like to live. There are places you would say, I am at home. Here I feel at home. This is one of them for me. This is me sitting in this small rock, looking to this vast horizon. in a scale in which I know what is my place here, facing this whole space. And from this rock, I wave to that small character represented in 1319, facing a landscape we don't see. But here, I am here and I can see. Well, to finish my talk, I'd like to mention a few lines of a poet who thought geopoetics, and he describes his meeting with a white landscape full of snow. When he comes in, he doesn't see anything. He believes that being in the landscape doesn't mean to see, but to find this landscape, you need to lower your guard, and you need to. I need to allow things to touch us. And in this poem that's called The White Valley, he says that all of a sudden, listening to the wind, line after line, something like a universe has been designed without being nominated, without breaking the enormity of silence. Discreetly and secretly, someone said, I am here, and here I begin. Thank you very much, guys, for your attention. I don't know if I was too fast, but before I pass the floor to our colleagues of the table, I'd like to wish that Afghanistan women can run freely through the landscapes. Well, thank you, Karina, for the poem, for the visual poem. It is very nice to hear lectures such as this. I now pass the floor to another woman, Professor Mariana Capelletti from Goiânia. Mariana, you have the floor. Thank you, Rafael. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am Mariana from the city of Goiânia. I am a professor of photography here, and right now I am pursuing my PhD right in the middle of this chaos. Well, I'll swear, if I knew this was going to happen, I would have made different plans. But I'd like to thank the invitation from Rafael. I'm very happy. After all this expectation, I'm very happy to be here today. And I'm happy when I'm nervous. And I think this is a good sign, because I get excited and enthusiastic. Let me share my screen with you. Okay. My PowerPoint. Yeah, it is loading up. Well, my work is about the Aragua War. It is a work that I started in 2017, and now it is temporarily stopped because of the pandemic. So I had plans of going back to the region, but I was not able to yet. So that's why it is in halt. The Aragua War happened in a region where today it is the border between the state of Tocantins and Pará in Brazil. But during the 70s, when it happened, it was called still the state of Goiás. So it is part of our history. I was there in 2017 3 times, and I went through a few cities there. So I went to Xambioá, which is in the border of Tocantins, in the Aragua River. And on the other side of the border, in the state of Pará, I was in São Geraldo do Araguaia, Marabá, São Domingos do Araguaia, in some villages that they call fortresses, such as Barbera, and also in regions where the conflict actually happened. My work is split by photography, landscape photographies, portraits, and a few objects. So it's a very classic and documental style. These are the three pillars for me to be able to tell a story. And my expectation was to go on to make more, to take more pictures and visit some more places, but it was not possible yet. But when I started my research about the Araguaia War, when I started studying about it and I got interested and I saw that there wasn't any photographic material about it, it was before I went there in 2017. I thought, from which point of view did I want to tell these stories? Because I found materials that were from the army. We saw the army, and the other one was from the Communist Party. And I thought, what was there in the middle of the way that would be those people who were more invisible in this story? So if the guerrilla war was a subject that was not very much approached, as the whole history of dictatorship in Brazil, there were a few people in there who were really invisible. And that's how I actually met the people, the people from the region, and they actually follow some parts of the story in which he says that it is necessary to tell the story from a point of view of those who actually lost the war, because you know the view of the heroes. And I said, who could be those people who really lost something there? And to me, these are the fielders who actually suffered this erasement along the time. And Benjamin will say this in his note about the concept of history, that the dads will not be safe if the enemy wins, if this enemy has not stopped winning. I actually thought very much about this, and I went after these fielders. And these are the ladies and gentlemen who are more than 70 or 75 years old today, because during the 70s they were about 30 or 40 years. So they are very elderly people. And the way that I found to meet them was knocking on the door. So it was not a research that I could do in any other way, because they actually have one telephone for the whole city. But I had to knock on their doors every day. Before I get into landscapes, I will show you a few pictures, because I need to say, people when they suffer traumas, they tend to silent, not to bring these traumas back, because we see this about the Holocaust, and we can think about this about the dictatorship. And this was one of the first things that I noticed there. People didn't want to talk to me about these matters. They didn't want to relive this. Everyone who I took pictures, they had a direct connection with the dictatorship. Either they were tortured, or someone from their families were arrested, tortured, or killed, or are still disappearing, or still missing. We have thousands of cases of missing people whose bodies were never found. And they found a certain resistance to talk to me, first because they are afraid. They asked me who I was, to whom did I answer. So this was a resistance I found. And with this resistance, there was my idea to bring a veil, because people who wanted to talk to me didn't want to be photographed. They were afraid. In some moments, I have the veil alone, because those were about the people who didn't want to be photographed. And these portraits are either of the places where the conflicts happen, or in their houses. And I decided to go personally to the scenarios of the war from the report of these fielders. So I didn't follow only the official story or the thesis that I read, but especially their reports. And they actually tell the story from their memories, from their minds. So there is the army camp that was right below that mango tree. So I went to that mango tree, and some things are still there. This is Mr. Raimundo. He actually took me to one of the camps, and according to his memories, he said this was jungle, and today a good part of this is now pasture. And he said no, there were some enormous nut trees, and we knew that it became a camp because they started planting other fruits and corn and maniocs. And from his memories, he was telling me where his father was arrested, where he lived. And if it wasn't for him, I would never reach these places. This is also another fielder, Mr. Simbiol, who was arrested, tortured for 40 days. And he didn't even know who the fighter, who the guerrillas were. And Mrs. Madalena also. In her house, she had her husband and one kid that were killed during the Aragua War. So everything that involves this war are just vestiges. So we don't have anything that preserved. In fact, during the whole process, I actually couldn't preserve the history. Sometimes this is abandoned. So what I found there was these were just traces of what was left there. So Benjamin will believe that the return of these images or going after these images is very much related to an attempt of compensation or a redemption, that we need to look at this past, we need to look at these places, these images, and everything that I found is always destroyed. And I follow very much Benjamin's line. He's my main theoretician. And I can say that the vestige pinpoints antagonically to a presence and an absence. So these vestiges, these traces, this is a file image. They are in search of these presences. And before I went there to the region, I tried to find images in the national file. So I went to Brasilia. It was very difficult to make this search because people didn't help me at all. And everything that involves file is from the national file, and the website Revealed Memories, which is also part of the national files. And before I went there, I created a landscape, a fictitious landscape to me, in an attempt to understand what was that place that I didn't know. It was like moon for me. I had studied about it, but I didn't know how it was, how the region was. And with these images that I found here in the army files, in the national file, I tried to assemble this landscape to myself. And when I got there, what I found was these ruins. And what was left can serve as an evidence to understand what happened. And for Benjamin, the present is full of vestiges of what happened. So what we see today are the traces of our past, in which many times it is treated with euphemism. So I treat it proportionally. And these traces are experiences of the past that are always renewed in every generation. This was a museum dedicated to the gorilla. It caught fire, it was burned, and they said, well, someone touched fire. Someone from the university and went there and collected everything. So I went to the university and I asked someone to take me to everything that was taken from there. And they have it all in boxes, and it's all pretty much lost because it's fully disorganized, partially burned. And the places where the fielders said where they were arrested and tortured, I visited these places, and some of them are still standing, which is the case of this house here. That was the prison, where, according to the report, more than 33 people were buried. And this is the headquarters of the Department of Police. And the chief of police used to live right on top, on the second floor, on top of the burials. But they actually remodeled the place. They didn't allow me to take pictures. This is another ruin from this gorilla. This is the memorial of the Aragua gorilla. It was planned and designed by Oscar Niemeyer, and it is fully abandoned now. The force of the river appears very much in the testimonies of the fielders. They tell other adversities, but they say, well, if you ask, how was the region, and why, a good part of them said that at that part of the state, people are expelled from the land, and there is a very strong relationship with the river. This is the Aragua River, and also the Aragua River during the drought season. This part of the river was where the conflict happened. From what they told me, they had bombs, real bombs. And it's good to remember that they were a little bit more than 70 guerrillas and against 6,000 soldiers of the army. So it took 6,000 men, trained soldiers, to capture 70 guerrilla warriors. But the number of missing people is much greater because some of them were never considered missing or considered in any count. And then I actually felt touched by this first presentation because these places, these landscapes that Katia Lombardi will say they are anti-landscape because they show where the conflicts happen and where deaths were caused. But there is no destruction anymore. And even so, we see these traces that Katia Lombardi will say it is the poetry of the trace. But you can always find something. You go there and you see it is a beautiful landscape, but that place carries out this memory, this bad memory of guerrilla. This is also another place of where the guerrilla warriors used to be. This is the a hill that appears in all reports. This is where the bodies were burnt after they died. They actually were put inside rubber tires and they were set fire just to remove any trace of human existence. It wouldn't look very nice to the government or to the army to show people being killed by their soldiers. So they were brought here and they were set fire. And here, the Duberman will say that these images are anachronical. These images from the past, they find the images of the present. And at this moment, I am doing this connection here of these images. The file images together with images that I took. This is still being processed. We're still matching the images, as well as the maps. There are a lot of maps. There are many documents that say how many people were captured, how many people were killed, who are those people. Some of them have names, others don't. The fielders, sometimes they have no name, so they are not identified, but they keep being forgotten. Also, during their death, at the times of their death, they are not named. And then the figure of this veil, I had to remove the veil from the story, from these landscapes. And I did a report because these are too many pictures. And this work, I went to Paraty Foco of 2017, and then at the Festival of Picture of Tiradentes in 2018, and we're still in the process to see where we're going to go next. So once again, thank you, Rafael, for the invitation. And I think I was indeed within my time, right? Yeah, thank you, Mariana, for your presentation. It is a work that I already know, but it's becoming more dense every time you present it. And it seems that it's going to be even denser. I will, I thank you for the 4 speakers. I have a few questions. And since we're all here in the meeting room and not doing this mirroring in our page, in our web page on YouTube, eventually you can ask the floor to ask your questions orally without any problem. I start with the question from Professor Susanna. She asks Klaus Speidel. She asks Klaus, she remembers the classic statement that photography is the conquest of the moment. But we don't take pictures with the history of the images below. We don't take pictures with the images that we would be present besides the present moment, eventually contributing for its sense. Would there be any narrativity that would come from the previous images that we carry along and project when we register the present moment? Sim, essa é uma ótima pergunta. Vocês podem me ouvir? Eu acho que eu tenho que mutar o meu microfone da outra sala.
Tem que sair da sala.
Ou
então pôr o fone, isso.
Deve funcionar. Sim. Essa é uma ótima pergunta. Bom, as imagens que foram tiradas anteriormente dariam densidade às imagens tiradas agora. Eu acho que, de uma certa forma, elas contribuiriam para a base de conhecimento de certos observadores, baseado nessa ideia de que as narrativas aparecem nas mentes de observadores. E, por isso, alguns observadores mais especializados podem ver coisas que outros não veem. E eu acho que, conhecendo essas outras imagens, contribuiria para a narrativa, como ela é percebida por aqueles que têm o conhecimento das imagens. Então, um fotógrafo contemporâneo, como pode até tirar uma foto e que, se ele for informado por Bruegel, pelo menos aqueles que reconhecem a referência poderiam enriquecer as imagens pelo conhecimento do Broidel. Então, a intertextualidade pode adicionar uma camada de narrativa, sem dúvida. Eu pararia por aqui. Okay, we have a question from Professor Rose to Professor Karina. The question, Karina, is how do you see the reception of the movies expanded in between the medias? The fusion of the languages, the silence in our questionings, our desires of so many landscapes. Is it going to be natural? Can you give us any example? Wow. Well, thank you for the question. Thank you for the question. That's a tough one. Well, I don't know if this would become natural. But I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer exactly, because it's funny. I work with video, but my body says everything. It's the history of painting. Obviously, I read about the expanded movie, and what I could say is, first, I think that the naturalization makes the languages stale. So I think about Newton Marx, an artist from Brasilia, who could actually get into this expanded semen, or this fusion of languages. I'm saying it because I understand it as a fusion of languages in between sculptures, movie making, creating projections. And he creates projections. And when we look at his work, you don't know what this is. Is it a sculpture? Is it video art? Or is it a movie scenario? Where are we? So I think that Peter Fish also is prone on this fusion of languages. But reacting very briefly to your question, the first work that came to my mind was from Jenny Roser. It's an artist I like very much, and she works with interventions in trucks and in elevators where it indicates the floor. She puts sentences there, very strong sentences. And one of her works happened in Rio de Janeiro, where she projected over the sand and one of the hills. And the first time I saw this work was a few years back in an expo. And I looked at her work as an expanded movie making. I don't call it mapping. I don't call it intervention. It is a movie making in the landscape. The screen is a wall. The wall or the screen is the hill, and she uses it. But if we look at video art, we see some boundaries being expanded, which makes us not to understand more the isolated languages in their niches. I don't know if I answered your question, Rose. I don't believe very much in naturalization of things. I don't believe that even the history of painting is naturalized in data with all nuances, let alone expanded movie making and the propositions that work in between borders. I'm talking about between borders of language. But this is what I could say right now. Well, thank you, Karina. Rose is saying that you did answer. You did answer properly. Yeah, it is okay. I have another question for Mariana, but I'll pass the floor to Osmar because Osmar has to ask a joint question. Osmar, you have the floor. Please be welcome. It is always good to see you again. Thank you, Rafael. Very good to see you again. First of all, I'd like to congratulate for the organization, for the roundtable. I think that the presentations dialogued very much, not only through some common examples, but the point of view of the proposal, the conceptual proposal, and not by chance. That's why I asked to ask orally my question, because I think my question is for Fattorelli and Karina. And besides this, I want to say I saw the work of Mariana Capelletti in the city of Tiradentes in 2018, and I was very well impressed with her job, not only for the history, but by the way she exposed it. But this is a different talk. My question is, and it goes because I was very surprised with the pictures from Fattorelli, and I was well impacted. I found it beautiful, and I found interesting that your speech came connected with Karina's, because I think your work dialogue very much. When you see the triptycho of Karina and the way she organized that video, and see the pictures, Fattorelli, it seemed to me that it was a central issue that has to do with atmosphere, the capacity of you capture, maybe not capture, but translate a feeling or a more ethereal sensation. I think it is obviously evident in the video, and it's not by chance that Karina, in her final part, presented the traveler over the sea of clouds. And by looking at your pictures, Fattorelli, especially the ones that you made of the last ones, the last series, the last essay, it reminds me very much Turner. These are monochromatic pictures that we don't have any human presence except the immensity in the color, the atmosphere that is overall there. And my question is there a tradition, a theoretical tradition over the concept of atmosphere? Because this seems to be quite in line with romantic issues that will work with the micro-perception, what is beyond a narrative or beyond a figure that hits us by the humors, or this plasticity of time. And it seems to be present in your work and in Karina's work. So the question is kind of the concept of atmosphere. Is it a concern of yours? Does it cross your reflection? Because intuitively, it seems that the work is crossed out by the idea of atmosphere. Karina first? All right, you decide. Okay. Well, to me, Osmar, thank you for the question, by the way. My relationship with my works, it happens from an experiences that I went through. This is not from an atelier. My work comes up in the landscape itself. It is with this experience, be it in a mountain, be it in my house window, that the work happens. So if I speak from a very personal point of view, my works have the measure of my eye and my perceptions. I don't want to appear egocentric, because my work is very much connected to the history of art, and you are right about that. The history of painting. This is where I feel good. So when I'm filming, I don't think about the theory of atmosphere, because I'm living at night. After, it would be to think about this would be after. It's out of the work, because I'm looking to the darkness. So the works that I make, the night is the center of everything. In the works of 2000, when I used a mini TV, one of those tourist cameras, there is one work in which I was in a beach, totally out of light, and the camera couldn't film anything because it was so dark. It was not a professional camera. It was not a movie-making camera. It was a very ordinary camera. And the eye of the camera couldn't see at night, and it went down. And to me, this is more important to see this lack of light than this atmosphere that appears in the picture. And I think that the darkness of the night has a relationship with this design of the landscape. Not that I seek for this atmosphere. When I'm living and filming a landscape, it is until which point I can resist looking at my landscape without any light. Sometimes my work takes months. The work that I presented here took me 1 year. There are works that I spent days in the mountains, days of walking and filming. But obviously that I try to come closer to issues of the romantic movement that are interesting to me. Not in a sense of deciphering everything or anything, but I just want to understand what is the limit, how far when the landscape, how far the landscape insists when the light is not enough. But this theory of atmosphere it comes later. But thanks for the question. Well, thank you for the question. Well, there are two questions from Susanna that I think you missed. One to me and one to Karina. I just wanted to alternate a little bit. But if you want to answer, I had suggested him to skip the questions. Okay, no problem. Well, I think that I'm pretty much in alignment with what Karina said. I'm glad that you saw these similarities and a few closeness in between the images. And this is all very intuitive. What we're doing, the works we're doing are very intuitive. But we can actually establish a few relationships with the theory of stimulation. In this meaning that these are works that are not really referenced to a previous meaning. Actually, they bring an openness to the experience, the sensorial experience. And this is very well marked in our works. And this is also very associated to this presence of the imagination, the sensorial body into the environment. This proximity or this immersion, this immersive relationship with this multisensorial body, and this is what prevails in our works. In my, and I think that in Karina's work as well, for sure. As she said, there is this insertion in a certain time, in a prolonged time. It is an open time that we live the experience of staring at something with no limit. Sometimes it extrapolates the meaning, the written meaning or a logical meaning of describing things. But Torelli, this has everything to do with what Professor Susanna asks. She comments, if these three essays that you showed would place a natural trend of photography of capturing different realities, what Katia Lombardi, a theoretician, or a theorist called as imaginary documentary. What would lead to these searches in your contemporaneous photography? Well, this question is very intensive and extensive question. For those who know photography criticism, this requires an answer that should be just as approaching or as broad with regards to the concept of Katia Lombardi, of imaginary documentary. I have a certain problem with this concept. It depends very much on how it is operationalized. But if it starts from the point of view of a document made in a different way, I think it is quite limited. It has limitations. I think it would be more interesting to bring the idea of a reversibility of this circuit, or a reciprocal presupposition in between the real and the imagination, and not a document that would become something else. We know that this route of thought is also a complicated route in the official history of photography, because photography would be first a document and then it would become something else. Either fiction or fantasy or whatever. But it seems to me that we would have to make a review in this history of photography, in this official version of history of photography. Purit Payar actually took a self-portrait of a drowning person. And if he's not recognized as the founder of photography, it is a imagined photography. It was an made-up photography in the 1800s, I believe. Now, if we look at the whole work of pictorialists, it is totally crossed out by this issue of imagination, of the poetic creation. And if we look at the purist photography, modernist, abstract, the whole thing is referenced on the fiction of the photographer who has visions, who is able to create images, to be able to portray his imagination, his anguish, or his view of as a human being. And this is recurrent. It has always happened. This presence of the imagination in the history of photography. With regards to contemporaneous, it seems there is a difference. This relationship that Karina brought out, this fusion of languages, this overlapping of several medias that we follow now, that brings a full temporality, or a more complex temporality to this issue, retaking some issues of the pictorialists of the 19th century, and at the same time broadening these issues to a dimension that is intermediatic, not only photographic, but it would be crossed out by several languages. This is a difference of the contemporaneous footprint. Yes, indeed, Susanna mentioned a topic that we can actually create a different colloquium just to debate this, right? To make another event, which is a contemporaneous photography that started in the 80s. Since the 80s that we're talking about contemporaneous photography. But there we have a bunch of questions here. to Mariana Copelletti. I don't know how I'm going to formulate, but Mariana is already reading these questions. Susanna herself starts asking if she has worked with the texts and if she is interested in using audios in the interviews. Felipe Furquin asks if the work is towards photo documentarism. Anna asks if the author, Mariana, is able to separate from the object. And at end, Klaus asked an excellent question to Mariana, saying that maybe the interest in traces, given the interest for the traces, the work of Mariana seems very much like him. That there are several things that he asks himself about this. But what Mariana thinks about the respective roles, the roles of eyewitness or people with whom you talk to, and the role of the portraits and the images of the traces, where the picture is a trace and you're photographing these traces. So please unfold the way you feel like. Okay, well, I think I'll start with photojournalism or the documental photography. I think it is closer to this and away from factual photography, because the facts are not there. They're not happening there. I am assembling the scenario. I am together with the reports of those people. There is no facts. And for Anna, sometimes it is very difficult because I didn't tell any story. I think Raphael has already heard some stories, some reports from a few people I photographed. And there are some of stories that are very heavy, specifically after the interview with Mrs. Madalena, whose husband and son were killed. They had no relationship whatsoever with the guerrilla. And it's the next day I had to wake up very early to go photograph because there is no easiness in the state of Pará, and I wasn't able to go because I got depressed. Specifically in this day, I was very touched. But I tried to hold myself together, but the reports are so heavy that it was difficult. And I actually recorded these reports. I have everything in audio, and I don't have any videos, only audios of all the reports, because I think that the work needs a text. So initially, my idea was to write a book. Photographers they always like books. And I felt that this book needed this text, and I think this work needs a text. The images are not enough. We need to understand the context and everything else. Today, I don't know if it's going to be a book or if I'm going to think about a different support. This is what I'm studying now at this moment. But the text is still still with the audios and the reports that I have from the National Commission of Truth. I also want to bring their version, but especially the interviews with the fielders, because they are all recorded. Also, some of them actually gave me an authorization to reveal, but they didn't want to take pictures. They didn't want their images in pictures, but I could use their interviews. We do have these reports as well. So I'm still studying how this material will be. Maybe I'm not going to write a book, but I'm thinking about something else. With regards to Klaus' question, indeed, when I was watching your presentation, I was taking notes about your references. And what I think very much is first the relationship with the reports, because I started from the invisibility point of view, the people being invisible, and then I saying, well, if I don't show these people, I am not going to be able, or I would still make them invisible unless when they didn't want to appear. But today, I don't know if I'm going to work with the portraits in my thesis. Everything indicates that in my thesis, I will remain with the landscape, because I have a lot more landscapes than portraits. I don't know, maybe, I don't know if I'll be back there because of the pandemic, but in the landscapes, to me, they sound like the trace of the memories of those peoples. People still live in that place. They are still there and looking to what is a pasture today. Yeah, it was deforested and it's a pasture now. And remembering that your beloved parents or relatives were killed in there. This is a place that's still part of the memory of those people. So I believe that the relationship between portrait and landscape is right there. I went to the places where they told me it happened, and I went to those places with them. And there was a boat driver who went with me everywhere in there. But he couldn't see me in the city of Xambioá, that he would come to me and say, let's go. Where are we going today? Where are we going today? And he went everywhere with me. And he said, look, we're going to the house of Mrs. Rosa and Mrs. Rita. And I interviewed. It was good that I interviewed people. When we got into the car, she said, she didn't tell you everything. She didn't tell you everything because she's afraid. What happened was this and this and this. Let's go there. I'm going to show you what happened. So these places are the living memory of a set happening, and they live with this every day. So even if in the photography it appears just as a trace, yeah, for them this is a living memory, and it's probably very annoying too. I don't know if I answered your question though. Well, all right. Wonderful. Well, I'd like to make a suggestion. I found very interesting your work. I actually removed the camera and microphone not to mess up the table. But you said you were thinking, my camera is not working now, but you were talking about a book, but your work is so suggestive of other platforms, such as, for example, a WebDoc or an expo with the installations. I'm remembering the Mathieu Penou work at when he used it was about gypsies, I guess, a few years ago, and you could see the document, and they would put a earphone and would listen to the narratives exactly like you did. There were a few things that were documents, and other things he would hand the camera for people to take photographs of themselves. So there were these different images. And I think that varying the platforms will actually value very much the work that is very nice so far. In a book, it is too much on paper. And maybe for the work to be broadcasted or to be known everywhere, maybe it could be a multimedia expo or a web doc. This would work well. Okay, well, thank you. I think it was this. Yeah, the book was a first idea because it is a thing of the photographer. And after I saw the work becoming concrete, it became a little, well, yeah, it is. Maybe I should think of different platforms, because we do have a lot of documents, lots of documents. And these documents help to understand the context. And some of the pictures we can show the jeeps and the soldiers, and in contrast with the landscape today. Yeah, the image shows. I'm not going to take any longer. Well, we're coming to it. It's past 5 o'clock. The table was supposed to finish at 4:30. Well, I think we need to close. Anybody else would like to ask one last question? We open the microphone to, we have about 50 people. One last question. If there is nobody, I do have a question. Okay, Suzanne is very participative. Well, now that well, the camera is not working. It's not my fault. I'm trying to, but it doesn't work. Sorry. Well, my question is for Karina. She showed the work of James Turrell with the windows that show the light. And I would ask, do you propose any cosmic windows? Since by photographing the urban landscape, you're not interested in the city, but it makes us see different things in your video, like in the video. And also, even when she looks, the landscape is not just the geography. So the question would be, would it be a cosmic window as well? Well, thank you, Susanna, for the question. Well, yes, I do think that cosmos is in everything. We actually forget about it. Like Mohaili says, orphans from cosmos. We're all orphans from cosmos. And this feeling of universe and this dimension that things are always the spaces are always broader and they have different thicknesses, and the view that we have also have a different, using the words of Osmar, distinctive atmospheres. I think that I can understand this as a cosmic window, not as something beyond or as far as distance or seeing a different thing in the picture, but looking at things just as they are, because I think filming in the city has a trap. The trap is that we think we have already saw everything. There is nothing else to see. That we know everything. That design is domesticated. That limits are conquered. The borders are already set up. And when we look at the city from, it is as if it was from the outback. When we go to the interior of the thing, something becomes greater. The city is not just the tributary of the ordinary and repetitive landscapes. This repetition actually makes us to believe that we have already seen everything. And to me, this is one of the major traps. In this regard, video one, it is Brasilia, the city of Brasilia. But it is just one of the versions of Brasilia. So looking through the wind, through the seasons, through the movement, through the light, without forgetting what it is to go out with a camera in any city in Brazil, to lay a camera in some place. In Brasilia, for example, in the model super squares, these are places. If you set up a camera in a place, the city officials come to you and they say, "What are you doing here? You're not supposed to do it." In the case of these distant geographies, I think the trap is in not being happy with the postal card. I'm not interested in thinking about the landscape as a postal card. because the beauty can be a trap as well. Beauty can be a trap. And where do we experiment this feeling of universe in this regard? Okay, Karina, I will ask you the last question because, of course, it is possible to imagine the city of Brasilia beyond its monuments. That is, the postcards of Brasilia are monuments. The imagination of Brasilia has to do with these traces of the city in a very urban way. But what would be the strategies for us to give a face? I mean, literally a face. To give a face to a city which is essentially a monument city. Would be a documentary of the surround or the downtown, but in a more warmer way, because we know these works exist, but in the collective imagination of the Brazilian citizens, especially, there are the monuments of Niemeyer. We have someone making a documentary on this that could help in this question. Well, I think that just as we look at a mountain, we have to accept the principle of we're not able to see everything. And I think that the cities which are monument cities, cities which have an image that is fixed on a postal card and that are encompass and devour everything else, they are they request a traveling eye. You have to be a traveler in the city. I think I don't say it in terms of adventure, but I say it in terms of immersion in space and with everything that means it. In my research group called Vagamundo, Nomad Poetry, our last project was a travel around the world through the embassy sector in Brasilia. 3 years of traveling around the world, and now we're just preparing to exhibit it. But we faced situations that we face in the border of any country. If I didn't have my badge as of a professor at UNB, we were stopped by the police, our cameras. The constant question during the whole time was, what are you doing here at the embassy sector? So the question that was latent to me is where the city ends. Where can I go and where cannot go? To whom does it belong? With this past here, this Bordemax garden, to whom does it belong? Just to show that one out of the embassies, actually, an official came out and said, I order you to erase all the pictures. And I have to say, this is not your country. This is the city of Brasilia. I can take pictures of whatever I want. I'm just giving you an example. But we have to get out of this posture of a tourist, as in a bad-spoken tourist, the one who is always trying to check and find the best angle that will confirm what he has already saw. So sometimes it is in a certain moment good to take pictures of the monument, and maybe the monumental thing in Brazil is the emptiness. And we believe that the monumental of the city is the cathedral or the Congress or the museum. And maybe this emptiness should be the central point, because Brasilia is a major medieval city with no walls. So I think that more than this, Rafael, we need to stop importing this lexico to understand Brasilia. Brasilia is different. In Brasilia, we have an experience that is a very difficult one. I think her camera went down. Well, you have to do your magic with the light you have, with the distance you have, and sometimes you feel like you are crossing the Sahara Desert. Yeah, this actually excites me very much because I think we look at Brasilia with the eyes of all other cities but Brasilia. Of course, it is. We look at Brasilia with everything we saw in life, and we need to understand that the cities are many. Okay, well, right. Well, thank you, Karina. Well, we're going to close our first roundtable of the second International Colloquium of Photography and Image of the University of Brasilia. Thank you, Klaus. Thank you very much for your presence with us. We are very happy. Obrigado por também me fornecer um tradutor. Foi muito bom ter a ajuda dele. Desculpe pelos problemas técnicos. A gente às vezes não tem controle sobre tudo. So thank you very much, Fatorelli, Forcinio, Karina, Mariana, Osmar, and everyone else, Professor Rose, Ana Terras with us, and all our colleagues of a research group on visual narratives led by Professor Susana, and myself as vice leader. And thank you, everyone. Professor, for our technicians, thank you very much also. We are very grateful to be able to count on all of your expertise in this endeavor, in this crazy endeavor we took today. I'd like to thank our technicians because YouTube and Google yesterday were very unstable. And today, what they did in minutes just to help us. So we have to thank them. All right. Okay, well, thank you. It was very nice to be with you. Thank you for the invitation and for the opportunity. Okay, I'd like to thank also. I thought you had finished. I just want to thank the opportunity of dialoguing. We need very much to dialogue. And in the aftermath, the virtual room redefines the distances, and we are all together. Even when separated, we're together. So thank you very much. Yeah. Well, I have to remind you that we still have some more tomorrow, okay? All right. Tomorrow we have the second round and the third round table. And at night we have the movie. One of the speakers, Ernesto Groit, is the first one to present in the afternoon. So be well, take care of yourself, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.